Hey, and welcome to Beijing. Today we're going to talk about traditional Chinese medicine. When we talk about traditional Chinese medicine, there are two main figures that it's important to remember. Number one is Shen Nong, or the Divine Farmer. The Divine Farmer is one of those semi-mythical characters that reaches back several thousand years in Chinese history. The Divine Farmer was one of those guys that went around and tried every herb and saw what the effects were on the human body. Was it poisonous? Did it make it sick? Did it have effect on other herbs or illnesses or how your body felt? His classic is known as the Divine Farmer's Herb Root Classic. It's kind of a repetitive name, yeah. But in this book, you compile 365 different herbal remedies that use minerals, plants, animals, and other medicines in a mixture combination that will sometimes counteract some medicines and stimulate the body using other things. This is the type of stuff maybe you heard like ginger ale when you have a cold or when you're sick. This originated with the Chinese using ginger to help fight off a cold. It has a hot property. More on that later. Number two is the guy called the Yellow Emperor, or Huangdi. He was from the era of three sovereigns and 5 emperors, the San Huang Wu Di. Huangdi's inner classic was a conversation between him and his magistrate. Sometimes he's a physician. These old texts sometimes have a little bit of ambiguity to them. What happens is, in the Yellow Emperor's inner classic, or Huangdi as he's also known, he talks about different ways in which to treat illnesses or treat problems with the body. Some of the information of Huangdi was supposedly given from Shen Nong. Now, Shen Nong and Huangdi were several thousand years apart, but you see kind of the relationship of reaching back into history and bringing it to the present with the Chinese. So even though we discussed acupuncture for the first time in written Chinese in the Yellow Emperor's inner canon, it was originally attributed to Shen Nong, who lived many thousands of years beforehand. With Chinese medicine, there are 3 important things we need to always remember. One, of course, I think everybody knows this one. It's called yin and yang. That's this little symbol over here. Notice I didn't call it yin-yang. That's kind of the Anglicization of this pronunciation. Yin and yang, something you're probably really familiar with. Light and dark, male, female, plant, animal, water, fire. These things are not considered opposites, but working together to create a dynamic in which they kind of oppose each other. So it's not really quite accurate to remember them as opposites, but you get the idea. They work together to create a whole. Yin and yang is the basis of all traditional Chinese medicine. When your body is balanced, yin and yang are in proper proportions, then you're healthy. When they come out of proportion, you have too much yin, perhaps you have too much yang from whether food, you have too little exercise, or for whatever reason, you become ill. So yin and yang are extremely important because Chinese medicine isn't based upon germs getting you sick, but that your body falls out of balance for whatever particular reason. One of the great and important forces in Chinese medicine is known as qi. You've probably heard of this word too. And if you ever saw something like the movie Star Wars, where you see Yoda using the Force, that's all based on Chinese traditional medicine, the concept of qi. The better you formulate and regulate your qi, the more efficient your body works. You can get qi from food, you're born with some, and you can synthesize it from other elements around you too. If you're really good at Chinese Kung Fu, you will be able to control your qi better, and perhaps you could do supernatural powers that you can see in movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or if you know Dragon Ball, you can throw a ball, like a spirit bomb, or you can live really old. Remember, Yoda was 900 years old when he died in Episode 5. Master Roshi in Dragon Ball Z was a really old guy too, and he was able to control really great strength, particularly if you saw the first Dragon Ball. Now, another important property, see, it's kind of like, how does this relate? And it's known as the 5 elements, or wuxing. Now, wuxing, unfortunately, doesn't translate really clearly. 5 elements, sometimes known as the 5 phases, but you get the concept. They're known as wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And they have kind of a dynamic going between them. Wood produces more fire. Fire produces more earth, or ash, as is probably more accurately translated. But they also not only generate, they also counteract each other. Think of the relationship between water and fire. Water extinguishes fire. We could use metal, like a bucket, to carry water, or we can think of condensation. This factors in really important in the future because there are many, many intricate relationships between the 5 phases, or 5 elements as they're sometimes called, and the way it works with Chinese medicine. We'll get into more of that in just a second. As with many things with the Chinese, there are very, very complicated and sometimes almost seemingly meandering relationships between things. The 5 phases or the 5 elements, wood, water, fire, those type of things, they also represent many other things in Chinese society. For example, when you see the chart there, you're going to see that the 5 elements have very particular colors, and those colors are representative of that element. Why? It's complicated. But also, the 5 elements are also representative of the 5 cardinal points that we talked about with the 5 sacred mountains. They represent north, south, east, west, and of course central. The 5 elements also represent the organs in your body. A very simplified, let's face it, example of this is that your heart is a very fire type of element. Your kidneys, on the other hand, are a very water type of organ or element. Now, we understand the relationship of pouring water onto fire, and in Chinese medicine philosophy, and actually in Western medical philosophy as well, when your kidneys aren't functioning, it directly affects your heart. This is the idea of when your organs fall out of balance, you become ill. When your organs fall out of balance and you become ill in traditional Chinese medicine, you go to the doctor brings you in his office, you'll sit down, he'll put 3 fingers right on your pulse in a very specific order, much more specific than I'm doing. The doctor will check your complexion and check your tongue, and this sounds a lot like what goes on in Western hospitals because these are actually Chinese in origination. The doctor will then figure out a few ways of what's happening. By checking your tongue and checking your pulse, the doctor can figure out where the blockages of your qi are taking place. One of the important aspects is to free the blocked up qi in your body, and one of the methods we do this is by using acupuncture, something you've probably heard of. In Chinese it's called zhenjiu. The hair-like needles are inserted in very specific pressure points all across your body, and not necessarily just where you're hurting. If you have pain in your back, you don't necessarily just get needles in your back. You get them throughout your body, on your hands, on your feet, in your ears, and even in your face in particular instances. These related pressure points open the qi and allow your body to flow more freely. Another aspect, maybe they'll add something called mugwort. And this is an herb that grows pretty much all over the world. And it's dried and ground up, and then it's inserted onto the needle and lit. It burns slowly and it heats up the needle, and it stimulates the needle even further. Another time they put like little calipers on the needle and electrify it to help stimulate your immune system. Another way to go about it is prescribing the right kinds of food. Food is extremely important in Chinese because all food, just like the 5 elements in your organs and the colors and the stars and the representations of the government and everything, they're all related. Food has 5 different qualities. You have a hot, warm, neutral, cool, and cold quality. And they all interact to retain or throw your body out of balance. I like to drink a lot of Coca-Cola, and my wife is always saying, don't drink too much Coca-Cola because it's too cold. She's referring to that cold property. And if you have too much of that cold property, it throws your hot in your body out of balance and you get sick. Lastly, another way is exercise, which is also extremely important. Exercise, just like in the West, it's preventative medicine. But exercise in Chinese medicine is traditionally surrounded around Tai Chi and Qigong. Tai Chi you probably all heard of. In Tai Chi, you're in the park and you're doing your hand motions. Those hand motions that they do actually represent the symbols of yin and yang, and they go through particular phases to restore balance to your body. It also helps develop your qi so that you might be able to better use it in your own body. Now, also in Chinese medicine, it's also important to understand that there is something called the 5 flavors. Don't really worry too much about what the 5 flavors are. You certainly don't have to memorize them, but understand that there's a relationship between the 5 flavors and your balance in your body. If you have too much of one particular flavor, just like those 5 thermostatic qualities, hot, warm, neutral, cool, cold, if you have too much of one flavor, maybe bitter, or maybe too much hot flavored food like chili peppers, or maybe something very acrid like maybe like Indian curries, something like that, it throws your body out of balance, and it's very important to have those proper balances. Now, the way the 5 thermostatic qualities and the 5 flavors come together along with the 5 elements is one very important concept. Maybe myself and someone else has the same illness, but will be treated differently depending on the way our particular bodies are, the amount of qi we have in our bodies, what kind of qi we have, because there's a couple kinds of qi. Also, there's the way our bodies react to particular flavors or thermostatic qualities. So the opposite is equally true. maybe we don't have separate illness, or we have very different illnesses, but our treatments will be exactly the same. It just so happens it falls together that our bodies are aligned in many ways, and then our treatment will be the same. So to be really well versed in traditional Chinese medicine, you really need to understand all the relationships between both yin and yang, qi, the exercises like Tai Chi and Qi Gong, your 5 flavors, your 5 elements, your 5 phases, the 5 thermostatic qualities. All these come together in a very complicated manner, along with the flow of qi in your body and your pulse, and all those things come together to make your diagnosis that hopefully will restore balance and make you feel better.